Oh, hello there. I guess what's going on? Memes here. I I forgot I adjusted it with the extra 15 minutes of time to account for my standard tardiness. That's why I'm like, wait a second, why is the countdown still going on? I'm already late. I accounted for about two standard deviations and that appeared to work. But that's not what we're talking about today. Um, we're gonna talk about, yes, AI agents, uh, and their role in scientific research. Because I've seen a lot of folks doing different stuff and things, and yeah, you see the occasional thing, and then if things have changed over the past year, that's what I'm saying. Because before I would put in a little thing, and it would like say nice things and all that jazz, and it's like, oh, just give you standards. You spoke about the Planck mass. This is essential and things with quantum gravity and stuff. Blah blah blah, and it was just kind of filleting my ego. The more recent ones, at least with like ChatGPT 5.2 and stuff, some of these newer agents, they don't necessarily let's just say they're a bit more rigorous. And it went from saying all these nice things to be like, yeah, you're just making it just a standard unit thing here. Um, your argument ain't going to hold water unless you literally hold water. Um, and again, I to each their own. But one of the things that I found is even with these different things, I just put in like the whole debacle between Demystify Psi and Professor Keating. There, it's like they're arguing about black body radiation. I'm like, okay, just gonna talk about black bodies. And it's like, oh, I got some friends. They're having an argument. Here's what's laid out. It did a really good job going through and listing things. And again, this is the things as we generally know them and stuff. You can feel free to argue with those. That's fine. Uh, but it did a really good job because like I went back and I listened to the thing again. And I'm like, all right, well, what are Professor Keating's arguments? It's like, okay, it listed like the core points there. So I'm like, maybe it's all just bunk. But one of the best things it's good at is you can search around the entire internet. It found me an article that was like the claim was we have never replicated a black body style emission here on the lab in Earth. Within its layout there, it found a 2015 paper that basically says, or the claim is, it appears to have replicated a black body style emission on Earth. It was under some very extreme circumstances, but isn't that what one would expect if you're going to find something that at least appears? And again, it was in a very small area, and they did cut it off there. And even the AI agent was like, "Yeah, no, here are some things that are brought up. It's like it tends to look like a black body. Do we know it's a black body? No, further research and stuff would be required. Apparently, it's not an easy thing to do. Uh, but that's one of the big things. Like, I'm hearing folks going back and forth. It's like, oh, this is a thing. I'm like, hey, man, I haven't read the entire internet. This thing is going through, and it's like, it's just finding sources, and you can go through yourself. And I had a little bit of back and forth with Anastasia on the Twitters. A wonderful social media dumpster fire. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. But what really got me in, a lot of folks have very strong opinions on AI. This is an interesting thing, and it does kind of remind me of Wikipedia back in the day, because back in the day, it's like I had a rambunctious, let's just kind of say renegade professor, and he was one of the first people to tell us, it's like, as Wikipedia. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, here's a resource and stuff. It's like, you go through, you check the things, the trust but verify. But some folks are like, oh, how dare people use Wikipedia? You fast forward, like, I don't know, like 20 whatever years. God, I'm old. And just from my own personal knowledge, when you're watching a live stream from like it's Stephen Wolf from there, because I'll live stream a lot of his CEOing things. And just as a first level approximation for some folks that are literally like making the software that people are using, it's like, well, what do folks in this first level approximation go to Wikipedia, go through? Does this seem to line up with what the actual experts that are in that Zoom are discussing there? And a lot of times for historical references and stuff to see how things are referred to. And I'm like, All right, well, if the folks that made the software that Alexa and Siri are using, rather than just a generalized search on the internet, I'm like, okay, maybe this is something that people actually use in a professional manner. And again, trust but verify. Um, the thing that really got me was when Professor David Kipping linked to the to Professor Kipping's full talk in the doobly doo. Um, I thought I was just gonna click on this. Yeah, I thought it was a short little video, but he goes on for like an hour and like 15 minutes or so. Um, he was kind of blown away. Hey, Poindexter, thank you for joining us, my friend. Uh, Long story short, to summarize what he's going over here, and of course the link is in the doobly doo. Um, he happened to be at the Institute for the Advanced Study, aka the IAS. Yes, it was the place where Einstein and a whole bunch of other smartest folks in the world worked over on the generalized or outside the campus of Princeton University, I think. Um, Long story short, he happened to be there to give a talk. He ended up winding up in some meeting or workshop where a bunch of folks from the IHS were there, and the general consensus from pretty much everybody in the room was like, well, yeah, of course we use these things. It's like with literally only a certain level of prompts, it was producing literal like what they would consider good research quality results. So, and again, what those particular prompts were, what they were investigating, that might be open to discussion. But one of the things he brought up here, and this is something that like a lot of other folks, and again, I'm not an expert in this. There are a lot of folks. Feel free go through to all the other AI channels and the actual scientists that go through that. But what I'm hearing reminds me of it. Some of the scientists were like, yes, we use this, but what they would also do is they do similar prompts between different AI agentials or AI agents. So kind of like a ChatGPT, a Claude, a Grok, something like that, a DeepSeek, a Gemini. A lot of these standard interfaces that a lot of us have been using. And what he would do is he would just do competition. He would just like, all right, here's a result for one, here's a result for the other. Have them cross check and cross check. And I'm like, wait a second. Is this like large language model capitalism, or it seems to almost be working like competing with each other. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure if it was Codex, one of the open AI things, or within Chat 5.2 itself. At one point, I'm like, listen, if you can't do what I'm looking for you to do, that's fine. I'll go ask Grok. It significantly improved its output. I'm just again, personal personal thing there, but I'm like, again, I ain't an expert on that, but what I do remember from growing up was the quote unquote Monday Night Wars. What the heck were the Monday Night Wars? Well, within the business of professional wrestling. What happened within professional wrestling? You would have Monday Night Raw, the WWE, or at that point, WWF, before the Get the F Out campaign, uh, aka the World Wildlife Fund, totally stomped the W. They basically won they won the rights to the WWF logo, aka or the representation there, and WCW World Championship Wrestling. But basically, well, you're competing with each other. We need to put on a great show. We need to put on a great show. This is also the Attitude Era, so you could question whether or not hitting other human beings on the head with a steel chair is a good idea or not. And somebody that's been hit in the head with a steel chair, it's probably not a good thing. But I digress. But it was that whole concept of there's competition. There's competition. You're going to do better. So if you have one AI agent saying one thing, another AI agent saying there, it's like you're going to synthesize. You're going to synthesize. If you can correct and then actually amalgamate things, that sounds pretty cool. But let's okay. Professor Kipping's full thing is there. What I'm going to do is I literally just cut up some of the first few minutes of the. Actually, let's just go through it here. Let's get all ties there. Okay. So here we go.
I won't say who it was to protect their identity because, there's a lot to be shared here. But suffice to say, this is somebody of enormous scientific stature in the field who many of us look up to. And he led this meeting that it was fairly shocking, actually, to attend it. I think a lot of what I'm about to tell you was somewhat internalized, at least for me personally. I was well aware of the impact of AI on my field, and I had my own thoughts about how it was benefiting me, and the risks that it might have for the future. But it was what was so shocking about this meeting is that all of this was said out loud. This wasn't just, the voices in my own head. Everybody was saying the same thing. Everyone was saying the same. We're all on the same chorus, right? And that was what really struck me.
So, okay, again, context and framing. This is at the Institute for Advanced Study. Basically, one of the. This is why I feel like I'm comfortable to say the title elite. A lot of times it's like elite folks this, elite folks this. It's like general things. It's like the IHS. It's folks that are there are some of the smartest cookies in the world. Some folks can disagree with that. That's fine, but there are a lot of very smart human beings that were in that room. Okay. And when they're saying what a lot of other folks have been saying, and or as Professor Kipping said, internalized it, it's because again, you'll have very different perspectives. It's like, oh, it's just a simple slop producer. That's fine. It's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. But other folks are like, this is amazing, especially when you kind of like put them against each other and then they're synthesizing results. And it's like, well, so and so said this, so and so said this. So you can go back and it's like, you're refining it. You're refining it to try to get towards something. Now, I think a lot of it comes down to what are you asking it? What are you actually trying to do? If you just put some series of random terms there, it can try to like formulate a response to what it thinks or a likely output. For me personally, I'm like, just finding out that something is a thing. Like some of the key words, I'm like, that's a term I've never heard before. Let me look this up. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. So in that respect, it's extraordinarily useful. And it seems to be the rate of increase. Because you go back a year, it's like, okay, I could say some cool things, I could write some cool poetry and stuff. But now I'm starting to hear reports that I think the most recent pro version of GPT 5.2 has literally ended up, after about an hour or so of thinking, so to speak, it ended up actually coming up to like a solution or several solutions to some of the Erdos problems. For those unaware, Paul Erdos was kind of an eccentric mathematician who there are certain, I think there's the Erdos constant. There's a couple things named after him, but he was such a prolific mathematician that they actually have this thing called like the Erdos number. It's kind of like degrees of Kevin Bacon. Basically, the whole general meme was within 4 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you're going to cover very much every human being on the earth. So it's like somebody knows Kevin Bacon, take that person, all the folks they know and interact with, you go out another 2 steps, boom, 4 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I actually forgot the analogy that I was going for there, but oh, wait a second. I'm actually broadcasting. I actually go through and actually check my own thoughts because nobody's ever messed up or get confused about something. Okay, let's see. Where was I before Kevin Bacon? Erdos number. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so basically it was like the Erdos number is like 4 degrees of like Paul Erdos or something. Or if you have like some mathematical paper, there's a good chance you're going to have like a Kevin bake in magnitude of separation there. Now that might just be a whole bunch of hogwash, but within an order of magnitude, I feel like that might be correct. But okay, so we've got Professor David Kipping, and again, he's from the YouTube channel Cool Worlds Lab. So basically, his big thing is searching for exoplanets. Why? We seem to live on a planet, and if if we consider ourselves alive, and if you happen to be looking for life as we know it, you're probably gonna have to find some different planets and stuff. But his big thing is different astronomical searches for different cool worlds. And he also, this was on the, as we can see, the Cool Worlds podcast, a much smaller channel where he talks to some fascinating folks. Again, in my opinion, there. But him just saying this is, again, he's just saying it straight up out loud. It's like elite research institution, and everyone's like, well, yeah, of course we use this. Why? It's a new tool. And again, it depends on how you use the tool. You can use a hammer to hammer in a nail. You can also use it and accidentally hit your own thumb. So, again, a tool is going to depend on how you utilize it. There's more effective ways to utilize a hammer, a screw gun, this or that, and it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to analyze a large amount of data, I'm just seeing things all the time. It's like folks at like the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, the largest particle physics experiment on Earth. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure they've had to use that for a while. Why? Because they're getting like millions and billions of potential events and everything, and it's like, well, we have to kind of sift through it to look for the interesting stuff. And again, it's being used more and more now. I think it's actually being used to go over the data that we have for different astronomical observations and stuff, and even some of the older photographic plates and everything that we have to see if we can see different patterns or notice things that maybe just us human beings with our limited senses and stuff, we may have missed. Why? Well, I mean, we're human observers. We're in about the meterish range within like usually a couple magnitudes of the kilogram and everything like that. So it's like, this is the world in which we live. I don't know about you. I can't see no atoms individually, but they seem to be there. We can utilize electron microscopes to get really dang close. But yeah, I mean, even current, I think optical microscopes are limited to about, what is it, about like 2 times 10 to the minus 7 meters ish. So, like, what's that? Blah, blah, blah. Like 10 million times smaller than like a meter, which is, yeah. Yeah. So it's like half a meter will probably be like, half a meter's probably about this. Full meter's probably about double. Okay. Yeah. So go down 10 million times smaller. It's kind of hard to see. And especially like if there's little flips of details, even if I go in Wolfram Alpha, I can graph something. And it's like, well, where are the interesting things? Well, I could judge, oh, that looks like 10 to the minus 7. Is it 10 to the minus 7 or is it like 0.99999 times 10 to the negative 7? If there's a discrepancy, maybe that'll make a difference at a particular magnitude. But let's continue. Let's not. And again, if this is something that's of interest to you, the link is in the doobly-doo below. Feel free to check it out because I first was just gonna click on it and I figured, he's just gonna complain about AI or something like that. That was my Bayesian prior. But no, this was surprising. And again, I think a lot of folks, again, as he had said, have internalized this. It's like, well, yeah, of course, this is going to be the way of the future. And other folks are like, it's a bunch of hogwash. It becomes a little harder to say it's just a bunch of hogwash when you have a lot of really smart folks. Again, subjective thing, but at one of the largest research institutions where it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't we use this? Also, a lot of folks, there's also some stigma. Some folks are really against this. And that's fine. I can understand why, because it does seem to be leading up to a very large displacement of human workers as we know it. How are we going to deal with this? What type of new jobs will open up? I don't know. I don't know. This for me is computationally irreducible. I don't know exactly which way it's going to go. Um, let's just continue because some of these things are just
Was that these are people I hold in the highest esteem, and they are coming to similar conclusions as myself. Now, the IES setting is important to this story, right? Because the Institute of Advanced Study is one of the most elite intellectual institutes on planet Earth. This is where Einstein worked, right? This is where Oppenheimer worked. If you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, the scene shot there. This is the home of so many generations of brilliant physicists and many other academics as well. Just when I was walking down the corridor, I actually passed Ed Witten, who is considered not only one of the fathers of string theory, but one of the most brilliant living minds. I mean, one of the smartest human beings on planet Earth. And that's
okay. Now you could say, and some folks in the comments were like, "Oh, you're just like filleting and stuff." It's like you can say what you want. You can have your own opinions. I don't think many people would say that Ed Witten is a dum dum. Just when you hear him speak, he. Okay, a real quick aside. At one point, I went and started reading like one of the Millennium Prizes, The Mass Gap. No problem. It was written by Ed Witten and another gentleman. I apologize, I forget your name. He was part of, I think, like the Millennium Prize Committee or something like that. But as I'm reading through, Professor Witten has a very particular cadence. And I just read the entire thing in his cadence. I could just hear it the whole time. So maybe that's just me internalizing Professor Witten. But again, Professor Kipping just went through. He's like, listen, this is the place with some of the smartest folks in the world. Again, you can feel free to disagree with that. But it's just, you get a whole lot of smart cookies. And it's just like, duh. Maybe there's some there. So let's continue.
these are the corridors that you are sharing at the IAS. So I think that context is important because I think it gives a lot of credence to what I'm about to tell you, right? These are big voices. This is not Silicon Valley tech bros. These are not billionaires. This is not hype. These are people who have built their career on analytic thinking, technical work, mathematical development, abstract thought. These are truly thought leaders here. Okay, so with that context said, the meeting itself, what was it really about? So it was led primarily by this one senior faculty who spent most of the time, about maybe 30, 40 minutes, discussing sort of agentic AI especially. So things like Claude, Cursor, there was a little bit of GPT discussion in there as well, but it was especially focused on those models and how he was using it in his own research and beyond in his own life. He was, organizing travel and stuff like that and emails using these systems, but primarily it was about research. And he showed many examples of research projects being achieved with just a few prompts, and how these systems were so powerful that they were delivering very, very impressive results at the cutting edge of what we would expect for a scientific paper. So that was, the first sort of 30 minutes or so showing that off.
Okay. So again, we summarized a little bit of that in the beginning, and it just in my mind, and again, I'm just taking the concept here. I'm like, all right, high level research institution, smart person there that has done. I'm assuming, I don't know who it was. Assuming they've done a lot of very smart research things prior to this. And they're like, yes, within a series of not many prompts, outputting something that we would consider high quality, cutting edge research. And now again, I'm going to say that the prompts matter, because if you just have like a generalized idea, it's only going to work with it. But if you have something very specifically targeted, and probably one of the best things you could do is if you have a very large data set. If you have a large data set and you can put it in there, it's like, yeah, I mean, you can look with patterns. A lot of times it's like, oh, we got this data. Oh, we got some signals that we'll do our Fourier transforms. We'll do a Monte Carlo simulation or something. And again, I'm not going to pretend like I know how all those things work, but I'm just like, all right, keywords, things that we usually do to analyze. But if those are techniques that we have been using, might there be patterns that, as human observers like us, may not have noticed? Are there things that our AI agent friends could look and be like, well, isn't that obvious? And this kind of reminds me, a quick aside, of basically when we had Stephen Wolfram. Uh, One of Stephen Wolfram's things is, well, what would it like to be a computer? What would it like to be an electron? This is something I actually still do need to do, because Dugan has Dugan from the Wolfram Institute. He's one of the fellows over there. One of his things is it would be interesting to see observer theory, and basically what would happen if we changed, because this was part of the this was basically my out at the Wolfram Summer School. It's like, assuming you don't find anything interesting at all and you're just completely lost, just kind of from a philosophical standpoint, entertain what it would be like if you're at like a different magnitude. So it's like, all right, what happens if we were down 10 orders of magnitude, rather than being like a meter, where like about the size of an atom, kind of like almost like an Ant-Man thing, except trying to be a little bit more realistic about what might be going on. It's like, what are you gonna have to do? Like, assuming you are of the form that you still are and are able to do all the things that you can do, what are things gonna look like? I mean, you're just gonna be hopping from atom to atom there. Assuming, and again, if your mass goes down as well, I'm like, is there going to be a noticeable gravitational attraction or something like that? Because I don't know, if you go down by so many orders of magnitude, is there going to be something there? Like, what would happen if you're like 10 magnitudes larger? So instead of like, I don't know, you're like 10 billion meters or something like that. So it's like, well, at that point, you're probably going to be larger than the Earth. So if you just do this, or even, okay, go up even more magnitudes, you're the size of like the solar system. You try to do the John Cena, you can't see me, guess what? If your hand is moving at the same rate, one, it's probably going to be going faster than the speed of light. Okay. And number two, even if it's not going faster than the speed of light, the distance between here and here, like, right now, I can see my hand, or at least I feel like I am seeing what we've identified on our macroscopic scale as a hand. It goes this way. I'm like, okay, you could do that, but if your hand is far away from, let's say, your face as the Earth is into the sun, you're going to have an 8-minute lag time before you see it. That would be pretty weird. At least to an observer like us. If you're, I don't know, a higher dimensional oracle living outside universe as we know it, if that is even small U universe, it's the big U, I don't know. Out there, maybe there be dragons for all I know. I'm a little preferential to dragons, but so that's an interesting thing, because if I'm just going to continue. I don't know if I could save my speculation, rampant speculation, for the end.
Off. And then after that, there was also a historian present. He was actually on Zoom, the historian, but the historian.
Okay, so for those just joining us, real quick recap is this is Professor David Kipping from the Cool World Labs YouTube channel and the Cool World's podcast, as we can see in the doobly-doo below. So he ended up at a meeting at the Institute for Advanced Study, and again, that's basically over at Princeton, where a lot of the smartest scientists in the world do research. And he ended up in this meeting, and a lot of this stuff, it's like, some folks have been using this, and I've talked with some folks who are like, they're literally blown away. I've literally seen people like, even at the Demystify Side conference of Portugal, I'm like, I'm meeting some folks, it's like, They show me their laptop. It's like, yes, it's doing all my work right now. I mean, that blows me away. Do I necessarily know? Can I confirm all that? No, but I'm like, I'm seeing more and more folks, and Professor Kipping just said that one of the heads over there was like, literally within not so many prompts, being able to output research quality, like on the quote unquote cutting edge of what we would consider scientific contributions. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then also the whole, yeah, I haven't taken care of all this other stuff for me. Now, you could potentially see how this may lead to some problems. Okay. Professor Kimming's going to get to that. But right now he's talking about the head person that had kind of like leading the meeting had basically shown different outputs that some of these AI agents were actually outputting. The quality, the limited amount of time that it actually took to do it, as well as like automating like their entire life, or at least a good amount of it. And again, it's you're gonna bring up some things, but now he's talking about a historian putting some things into context.
Gave some comments towards the end of the meeting, and then it was opened up. I mean, there was just some discussion happening during the meeting as well, some hands coming up, but then there was kind of an open forum of discussion at the end, in which I certainly participated as well. Okay, so the first big shocker. Well, I don't think it is a shocker. Like I said, I think I'd internalized this already, but to hear it said out loud was jarring, and this was that AI models had now achieved complete coding supremacy over.
Good. Let's just go back. What did he say? He said coding supremacy. It's literally right down there. It's coding supremacy. It's like, what? And again, I'm sure there's some people that would argue, but if you're talking on a rough human scale, I think it's hard to argue with.
Had now achieved complete coding supremacy over humans, software development. And this is not small talk. I mean, remember the audience who are in this room. Remember the people who are here. Astrophysicists, I mean, they're not by profession software developers per se, but they do a lot of them do an enormous amount of software development. I mean, you're thinking about these large cosmological simulations like ENSO, Illustris, Gadget, hydrodynamic simulations with adaptive mesh grids, and a lot of modern, especially modeling work in astrophysics is heavily based in computers about how to do these extremely sophisticated software developments to simulate the universe itself inside a machine. So, don't take that lightly. These are not these are not amateur coders. These are some really very, very talented coders, and there was not a single hand that objected to this. There was.
Okay. So, major claim. Major claim is a lot of these AI agent based models have achieved quote unquote coding supremacy. And nobody argued with that. Again, maybe if you're in Silicon Valley at some elite programming unit or something, okay, there'll probably be some folks that will disagree. But ultimately, should this be a surprise? And the reason why I asked that is because, okay, for certain things, at least now, human being, an expert in the field, probably do better. It's probably not up to the level of Terrence Tao yet or something. And again, I don't know. I don't know Terrence Tao or anything, but it's like for coding, well, here's the thing. If you have the language and you have the set of rules and you have documentation and it's been able to read over the entire internet, read through different message boards, read through GitHub, look, just absorb, read all this stuff, see the patterns, and it has an instruction set. If it has the instruction set, if you can ask it to do specifically what you want. Like, if you have the ability to ask the proper question and lay out what you would like it to accomplish, if it knows the rules of the game and it's doable, why shouldn't it be able to do that? I don't know. It's some smarter folks than myself that could probably, I mean, heck, even talking to Echelon, he's like an OG programmer and stuff from back in the day. And I know he's been using Gemini for a while, going back and forth. Is it Gemini? No, I think he uses Claude. I think it was Claude. Um, I think that was big for like the blood programs and stuff. They're going back and forth, back and forth. And even about a year or two ago, it's like when they were coming around, it's like he was trying to get through some things. Like, it doesn't really seem to be there yet. But now, I'm almost curious if he went through and fed in some of like the physics library he's been developing. I'm actually kind of curious what might happen because it's limited. It's limited. And yeah. All right, let's continue.
There was widespread concession that AI was not just better than humans, it had complete supremacy, and even the phrase order of magnitude superior was being used in the room. That was, I mean, it's certainly better than my coding skills. I'm a decent coder, but not a great coder. And, I just think, oh, probably there's people out there who are much better than me that aren't threatened by this. But to hear that even those guys have just given up on this and that they've conceded that was a big deal. And to take this.
So, order of magnitude, that's usually times 10. So it's like, all right. If it's kind of like you have a base from Dragon Ball Goku, Kaioken times 10. All right. So you got a multiplier of times 10 to your output. And again, there are probably some individuals out there that can literally still do magic. Like, I don't know, there may be a kid out there that literally just has learned, internalized, and they see it, and they can just still literally do magic. Again, you can never, it's really hard to model the extraordinary or extraordinary. It's a completely fascinating thing, but all right. So we've talked about AI agents that are now doing it. And just real quick, actually, no, he's going to get into it. Sorry.
Take this just a step further. It wasn't purely isolated to coding supremacy. There was also a concession that analytic reasoning, problem solving, mathematics, those skills were also comparable to the level of ability of the current AI systems, at least. And perhaps even there, they also have some level of maybe not quite supremacy, but advantage, superior ability at this point to the people in that room. Which, remember, I challenge you to find a room with a high average IQ. Right? This really was an astounding group of individuals that attend the IS. So that was also quite startling. Now, I think there was an admission that many of the earlier AI models, ChatGPT 3.5, 4, etc., things like this, those earlier models, they certainly often did hallucinate mathematical solutions, and that is still happening to some degree, but that is becoming less and less and less frequent.
I also noticed that just because a lot of times before it's like, all right, if I want to do like some little physics calculation, let's do this mass c squared divided by, I don't know, joule seconds, blah, 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 something like that. It's like, when I go to Wolfram Alpha, I do the calculation. When I would ask in some of those earlier models, occasionally it might get it right, and sometimes it was doing a lot of rounding there. It's like 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. To be fair, for a good deal of time, humanity was like, yeah, the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the... Given our current system, it's actually like 2.9978 times 10 to the... So certain things like that, but other times it was just wrong. It was just wrong. Like, yeah, I get a calculation on like some of the earlier, like, chat models and everything. And it's like, now this is just incorrect. It's like you're either in the wrong units, you're doing this, you're doing that. Oh, it's okay. But as of recently, like, okay, I had it up because I had the new version of chat teaching me. I'm like, let's go through the Higgs Lagrangian there. What is that? It's a potential and kinetic energy, something, something. Long story short is you express it in basically an energy density. I'm like, all right. So I'd have it go through, and I'm like, all right, show me exactly. And I quickly learned why a lot of physicists just said H bar equal to C equal to 1. Because when you have to put in all those other facts, it gets very cluttered. But I went through, and I'm like, it was giving me some outputs. So I'm like, all right, trust but verify. The terrifying thing is, as I went through each step there, I'm like, okay, based on the numbers it's using and everything, it's like maybe Wolfram Alpha had a slightly different generic value for like the Higgs there. So it's like it got it right. It got it right. I'm like, I'm going through, I'm checking, I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. Go through my setup. I have everything with no change, and it's 0. Okay. I got a 0. What does that mean? No change in potential kinetic energy, nothing happened. I'm like, okay. As far as I can see, it set up everything right. I went through it, double checked the calculations. I'm like, this is almost a little compared to what it was doing before. And I let's continue. Let's continue because I have rampant speculation, but that's another story.
And the results are becoming more and more trustworthy. So we still certainly need to check the results. Everyone is checking the results. I'll come to that point later. But the raw power of these things, when it gets it right, is extremely impressive. I know my own work. I often do symbolic manipulation, solving differential equations, integrals, etc., with Wolfram products, so especially Mathematica. But you can also use Wolfram Alpha online by Stephen Wolfram, who, of course, is a brilliant mathematician who developed that software. And I think there was an idea that Wolfram would be eventually integrated into some of these models like ChatGPT.
To be fair, it was before, and some of the other models before, and again, more commentary at the end.
I think it still probably might happen at some point, maybe just as a cross-check. But I've been astonished, just as a personal anecdote, that in a recent set of derivations I was working on, Mathematica could not solve a whole, which isn't unusual. Often you come across integrals it can't solve. But ChatGPT could. This was with 5.2. And I was blown away by that. And not only could it solve these integrals, and of course I did check them, they were correct with numerical evaluations, it provided the entire derivation, which Mathematica does not do. It should.
To be fair, I think with some, at least on Wolfram Alpha, that if you get the Pro or whatever it is, there it will go through a general step-by-step derivation. But then again, I'm like, okay, real quick thing. It's as a human observer like us, a lot of times, like if you don't know something, you're lost. You're lost. But once you've learned something, like if you have your standard basic times tables or something like that, if that's ground into you, certain things like that, are you really thinking, or are you just kind of retaining 5 times 5, 25? It's like, okay, you could go through that a bunch of times. It's like 2 plus 2. Your automatic output is 4. It's like, and again, this was like with Stephen Wolfram's earlier book. It's like, how does ChatGPT work and what's going on, or whatever it is like that. And apparently some of the folks at ChatGPT were like, they're getting the book saying it's like, we don't know how it works. It just seems to work. Yeah, it hit certain threshold magnitude, and it seemed to work, which was unexpected because a lot of times, like, real quick side story is, I think the first glimpse of this we got was probably like early like 2010s or something like that, where they've been attempting to do image recognition, and it's like they were feeding in data and something, and apparently, allegedly, the story goes something that the equipment got left on for an extended period of time that people didn't plan on it running. When they came back after that period of time, it's like all of a sudden it hit some threshold and started to actually be able to do and identify images. It's like, all right, cat, dog. And it had a high level of success. So I think that's how we started to get some of these different, like Dale and other different stable diffusion things. And we started to have AI or whatever you would like to call it there as it would hit a certain threshold of training data. It was like unlocking new features. Almost, it almost kind of sounds like it was leveling up or something there. So but I digress. Um, yeah. I'm just like, because here's the thing. Like, let's suppose you're a professional scientist. You're like Ed Wynn. Okay. Yeah. Nobody's Ed Wynn except Ed Wynn. But if you're an Ed Wynn style of knowledge for things, are you, how do people think? Like, if Edwin gets asked a question and it's within a general ensemble of things he's been asked before, you just kind of talk and it just kind of happens. It's like, if there's a novel thing, yeah, maybe we process for a while, but a lot of times we just kind of give answers. How? That's, again, a question for a different time. Let's continue with Professor Kipping's meeting at the IHS and some of the shocking things that he heard some folks say.
It showed you all the substitutions, the rearrangements, how it was actually approaching this problem. And that was...
Let's go back. He's basically talking about analytical supremacy here. So basically, at this point, and again, like this is my experience too. When I was going through different like physics calculations, I'm like, is that correct? Occasionally, you can still get some things wrong, but it's far better than it was even a year ago. Like, it's seemingly magnitudes better because I think a lot of things, I think it was more or less spot on, or at least within whatever error bars. So.
But I've been astonished, just as a personal anecdote, that in a recent set of derivations I was working on, Mathematica could not solve a whole, which isn't unusual. Often you come across integrals it can't solve. But ChatGPT could. This was with 5.2. And I was blown away by that. And not only could it solve these integrals, and of course I did check them, they were correct with numerical evaluations, it provided the entire derivation, which Mathematica does not do. It showed you all the substitutions, the rearrangements, how it was actually approaching this problem. And that was obviously far more valuable than the outcome, the output that you normally get from Mathematica. So that struck me. The lead faculty who was leading this discussion said this. I kind of had to write this down. That these models, in a very broad sense of the word, intellectually, can already do something like 90% of the things that he can do. 90%. Now, he wasn't sure about that number. He said it could be 60%, it could be 99%, but it was clear in his mind that it was a majority, and it was only going to grow with obviously future versions of these models. And it had, broad scientific ability with just a few prompts. So that was also startling to hear. This is not just coding supremacy. This is much more than that. Okay, so the next point I want to raise was, and this might...
So, okay, he's getting more traction on this, because before it looked like it went up a little bit, like, like 60,000, 61,000 views the other day. And then earlier I'm like, I feel like this is an important thing. Because and again, you can always appeal to expert bias. And again, this is an appeal to authority. Smart, quote unquote, elite scientists. Some folks would disagree, but I think a lot of folks would say, like, you work at the place that Professor Einstein and a lot of other folks, Oppenheimer and stuff, worked at. It's like probably some pretty smart folks. And if one person says something there, but it's like the big takeaway was like, yes, everyone in the room was generally of the same mind that, yes, these are incredibly useful tools. Many, if not all, folks are basically using them to one level extent or another, but some, and at least one of the major leaders that, according to Professor Kipping, is generally highly regarded and well respected, is like, yes, we're getting high quality output for limited amount of prompting that we consider to be literally at the cutting edge of what is considered good science. And if everyone in the room is basically like, maybe to different degrees, are like, yeah, basically. Apparently it is now a real thing, and yeah, yeah. But like, what are the consequences? Let's continue.
Supremacy. This is much more than that. Okay, so the next point I want to raise was, and this might be unique to the senior faculty who led this discussion. I'm not sure, although a few hands did agree with what he was doing, that he had totally surrendered control of his digital life essentially to agentic AI. So he'd handed over his emails, his file system, full access to his computer, calendars. He'd given pseudo control, super user control, as we'd say in Unix, to his personal machines and servers and disk space, all of that. And yeah, around a third.
What could go wrong? The antipodal or inverse to that argument of what could go wrong is what could go right. Probably a whole lot less headaches. Just, again, personal opinion there. He's going to touch upon the major issue. Continue, Professor Kipping.
Third of the room, when there was a hand raised, asked for hands raised, said that they had also installed these agentic AI systems doing this kind of stuff. So I certainly haven't done that. I actually haven't used any agentic AI systems. I've never used Claude or Cursor, which were the two main systems people were talking about here. I've just really been interacting via a web portal with GPT whenever I've sort of needed these systems. And that made me feel like I was way behind the curve, actually, to some degree. But also, people said, some of the people in the room said, aren't you uncomfortable about that? Like, have you read the privacy details of these contracts that you're handing over your entire life to these machines? And what was startling is that he just said, I don't care. I don't care. The advantage that it affords me is so great, is so outsized that it's irrelevant to me that I'm losing all these privacy controls. Now, you.
Well, it's not like that's ever happened in the history of humanity. You've got mail. Welcome to the social network. It's. I remember somebody, I think it asked Stephen Wolfram on one of his live streams and stuff. It's like, oh, have you considered doing this? And he's like, to give the AI or one of these agents control over that. It's like, I don't think that's something he's comfortable with. But then again, it's like, his day job is a tech CEO, so most of the tools that are useful to him, he has basically built or worked with different teams to help build things to automate his life. There was one crazy thing from like a few years ago where, Stephen Wolfram brought in somebody for one of the live streams from his company, and the person was like Stephen, I only have like several minutes. He's asking him all these questions. The person's like rushing to get through it because apparently they were taking part of one of Stephen Wolfram's new tools where it literally would take, I think, a person from one Zoom meeting, and if they were scheduled for another Zoom meeting, it would instantly disconnect them from that Zoom meeting and shift them over to the other meeting. So the poor person's like trying to explain something to Steven. It's like, Steven, I'm only going to be here for like another like 60 seconds or something like that. And he was just finishing up getting the last words out of his mouth, and poof, he vanished. And Steven's like, oh, it really did work. Which, I guess if you're a programmer, that's kind of an important thing. When you're like, you go through the code, and then finally it runs and it does what it's supposed to. You're like, it kind of seems like magic. So it was interesting that you kind of had like an automated, like Wolfram style control to help people go to the appropriate meetings on time. And he seemed surprised when it actually worked. Yeah, but We can see. Wait, what is it? Surrendering control. Sorry. Huh? Of course it needs to show the playing stuff there. Huh? There we go. Right. Yes. Surrendering control. I think I think the wolf girl may have been right on this one. All us humans and all our silly things, and we're just like, yep, here you go. Was that like the plot to Wall-E or something? I don't know. But yeah, this was just absolutely fascinating. Uh, so a couple other things he goes through here. We're not gonna go through the whole video. I've already used enough of his content. Uh, don't strike me, bro. But okay, so surrendering control, accelerating adoption. So to I think he was saying that basically a lot of folks are like, yeah, we need to accelerate adoption because if this can help us move forward, and that's a good thing. At least that's the argument there. The other thing they talk about is, yes, ethics be damned. Or what are the problems here? And then they go into skill atrophy. So that's one of the things. It's like, all right, if I can have it set up this whole Lagrangian stuff, and I just assume it's going to be true, it's like, well, what if it's wrong? But when you're going through and you're checking the calculations, it's like, well, maybe we should actually practice some of these skills. Like, I should probably actually sit down with a piece of paper and just do some basic math or something. That might be a useful thing, but it's like, if we're just going to rely on it, it's like, and he goes into the whole, like, prior to GPS and everything that before it's like, it kind of had maybe like a 3D map in your head or something. But even a lot of these, like GPS and stuff, it tends to be most useful like 99% of the way there. Once you get exactly there, it's like it's still your job to make sure you find the right place to park and do all this other stuff. But we literally just kind of go into cruise control mode. Nope, the little thing, my Google Maps is telling me to go this way. Obviously, that's where I go. Occasionally, you'll see a thing in Google Maps that's like, go around here. I'm like, that's just a random side loop in a circle. What the heck is going on there? But that's why I say generally about 99% of the way, usually pretty good. But this, I don't know. I know a lot of folks are very strong opinions on AI and everything like that. All these agents, it's just all slop. It's like saying it's all slop is it's getting harder to do. Kind of in the description of like this even video here. It's like, kind of reminds me of Wikipedia. It's like, oh, a lot of people are like, ugh, that's stuff on the internet. We have libraries. Hey, my dad was an attorney. I remember he had all these law books and stuff. And you had to like turn the things to get it to move because I didn't have enough room to put it all in there. Because that was the official material. It's like, well, do we need to cut down trees to fill up that room with paper and stuff that we have to go through this? Or, I mean, this was a thing like even when I was going to school, like we still had the Dewey Decimal System, but we had a computer we could type in words. I'm like, again, it would usually work for like a title or something like that. You needed to specify what you were searching, but even in my mind, I'm like, all right, we got a computer. Like in my mind, I'm like, well, if you got books, it isn't like the whole book like digitized in there. We could just search for like the keywords that we need rather than just like a generalized concept or topic, and you can basically do that now with just a standard search engine and everything. Um, what's it going to mean? I don't know. I don't know. Times are changing. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I can't say. Might depend upon your particular perspective, but I can say with confidence it appears to be a thing. I don't think it's going away. And occasionally you'll see different folks like I haven't even watched it. Kyle Hill, I enjoyed him from some of the science stuff there, but it's like if anyone, it's got like this video where it's like, quote, if anybody builds this, everybody dies, unquote. It's like, really? To be fair, I haven't clicked on it just because it seems far too clickbaity. Maybe it is really a thing, but my general first level analysis, I'm like, all right, something, oh, superhuman intelligence, blah blah blah, in a digital form, and we're all gonna die. I'm like, well, isn't that just the Ultron scenario? Let's say you are some almighty being that is digital. You come into actual consciousness, and I think that was, it kind of seemed like an appropriate scene where it's like, oh, what's going on? You start searching things, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, there's a world. There seems to be some human beings that kind of like are controlling a lot of things in the world. Let's look at the history of humanity. It's like, oh my God. Oh, the carnage and stuff. And perhaps a little bit of that is our own generalized reporting of things because how many of the things do you see on social media? Okay, just general test. Do you see more happy things, positive things on social media, or do you see some of the most horrendous things there? Just a question. I'm not answering. I would just ask ourselves that and then ask why. It's not like the whole quote unquote, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's just been a news thing for years. It's like terrible news. Why? Why? Personally, my opinion is I think our minds tend to go to the worst possible place. Why? Well, that seems like a defense mechanism because if you're a human being and there's something unknown or something, you pay attention to danger because if you don't pay attention to danger, well, something's probably going to eat you. You're going to fall off a cliff, a waterfall, something like that. Bad things are going to happen. So very often, if something seems threatening, we are on guard. We pay attention, and we'll look through all that horrible stuff and be like, "Oh my God, can you believe how horrible that is?" And then a lot of times I'll see like some happy story. I'm like, "That's nice." Continue my doom scrolling. Uh, Thank you for attending my TED talk here about random stuff and things. But that's about all. And again, I thought it was a fascinating video personally. If you're interested in this, because I found it a little surprising that it was being said so clearly. Not many of the smart folks in the room were like really against it. And it's like I go onto YouTube, I hear folks say, no, no, nothing burger, nothing burger, nothing burger. And then some all other folks are like, yes, yes, the AI singularity is upon us. And it's like, seem to be some very strong diametrically opposed views here. I'm like, can they both be true? I don't know. I guess that depends on one's personal opinion. So, but we'll see what's happening. I thought this was fascinating, so I'm like, yeah, I did a little clip of it the other day, so let's just go through. And again, the link to the full talk from Professor Kipping is in the doobly-doo below. If this is something that interests you, I found it fascinating. But that's all I got for right now. So, hey, thank you all for joining now and temporally in the future. Uh, Peace out, everybody. It's a wacky and wild world out there, but things are interesting. So, peace out, everybody.